this is what we're going to be covering today. First of all, we're going to be defining what short-term rentals are. We're going to be exploring the why. Who will you be serving with short-term rentals? Where? Is this the right business for you? Steps to get started. We're going to go over some day-to-day activities and how to achieve your vision. And then we're going to finish up with some Q&A if anybody has any questions, okay? Okay, so a little bit about me. I think it's always helpful for some perspective. I'm a real estate investor. I've been doing this for about 15 years now. So I'm a realtor, I'm a wife, mom, and a world traveler. As far as education, I have background in business administration and communications. And so my husband and I, we are real estate investors. That is the core of what we do. So we've used different strategies, like we've done short sales, we've bought bank-owned properties, for sale by owners, standard sales, and we have done things like fix and flips. I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with that, with like all those programs on HDTV and all that. But one of the favorite things that we like to do is fix and hold, where you actually fix the property, make it all nice, and then you hold it. And you hold it as a rental. So up until 5 years ago, we were exclusively doing long-term renters, right? So like your traditional one-year lease where you have like the same person staying there and you just give them the space, they come and they bring their furniture and all of that, and that's their home. But about 5 years ago, I got the calling, like, I got the calling for doing short-term rentals and, you know, getting into this. And it was just super scary, honestly. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh my goodness, I wish I could do this, but it's so overwhelming to think about this, right? Our properties are not necessarily where we live. And so this is like doing this remotely. That's kind of like, right? But we stood on our ground. I got a mentor and, you know, just worked through it. And turns out that I love this, that I'm actually really passionate about short-term rentals. And so this is what we've found is that we have like a sweet spot because we still keep some of our properties with long-term tenants, and we also have the short-term rentals as well. So that's a good combination to keep us in a good place. You know, like you don't want to be like heavily in one area and then something happens and then you're kind of stuck, right? So you need to be able to have balance and you need to be able to pivot in case it's necessary. So, okay. So now let's define short-term rentals. So these are properties that are fully furnished, they're equipped so that anyone can just come in, open the door, and they can stay there. I mean, like, think like a hotel. So what it's not an Airbnb, okay? Understand that Airbnb and Verbo, those are marketing platforms where you actually market your short-term rentals. So I know that it's kind of like, oh, Kleenex, right? Like the tissues, people refer to them as Kleenex because it's gotten that connotation of, you know, that's the thing. But the property itself is not the Airbnb. But, you know, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like we don't need to get that technical. One thing to know is that short-term rentals rules and regulations, they really vary depending on the market. So you really have to do your homework. So some markets can be super friendly to short-term rentals and others are not. For instance, where I live in Dana Point, they don't give out any licenses for short-term rentals. So at one point they were giving licenses and then they stopped. So whoever got their license back then, they're good up until the moment that they say you're not good anymore. But any newcomers, they can't go in. Another thing is, depending on the market, there's a definition for that market of what a short-term is. So in California, where I reside, anything that's below 30 days, it's considered short-term, okay? And so it's like if you were staying at a hotel, and so you pay hotel taxes. However, where we have our properties in Florida, it's anything below 6 months. So if I rent to someone for 5 months, they still have to pay those hotel taxes. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind, that each market is different. So even within the same country, you have different things. Within the same state, you have different market, even within the same county. So you just have to do your homework. Okay. All right. So now, why do we do this thing of short-term rentals? So simply said, this is much more profitable than a traditional rental. You can expect at least 2 times of what you make with a long-term tenant. Also, your property is much better maintained. You're constantly cleaning it, right? Like this is not like when you sign a lease with a regular tenant and you're like, oh my goodness, I hope this person takes good care of the property. I hope their dog doesn't destroy the carpet, and all of these things, right? I hope that they tell me if there is a leak that's causing mold or something, all of these things. You hope, right? Like you hope that they will do that. You hope that they will pay your rent and all of that. However, with the short-term rentals, you're constantly checking on your property. I mean, like literally, one guest leaves, then you clean it and you assess, is there any maintenance that we need to do or whatever. Your guests will let you know, hey, the toilet is not working. Like they don't want to get into a rental that, oh, I can't use the toilet now, so they will let you know right away. So you're on top of it. So in my opinion, a short-term rental holds its value so much more than a long-term rental. Also, it's hospitality. I mean, let's face it, this is fun. This is so flexible. Like it hardly feels like work. And that's why I love it so much. It's just, I love being in this business of hospitality, of service, of, being in customer service with my guests, right? So also just know that there are many options for this business, right? It's not just one thing, like, oh my God, I need to buy a house to do this, or no, there's so many options, right? And what I would like for you to do is to open up your minds to possibilities, because there are many possibilities. Okay, now you need to, or you get to define, who do you want to serve, who do you want to host. You're as you're thinking about the idea of having a short-term rental, then let's think, okay, who is my target? Who is that I'm going to be talking to? Who is it that I want to come through that door and stay at my place? And answering that, I mean, like we'll go through like a whole exercise, not in this presentation, but you go through a whole exercise to determine who do you want to serve, and that will start shaping up what your short-term rental will look like. Okay, so typically when we think of short-term rentals, we think, oh, travelers, tourists that come to explore the area. And so think like destination places like, oh, Hawaii or Orlando, things like that, right? People are traveling there just for that purpose. Now, that is just one segment. And so one segment that you can definitely focus on that segment alone and do really well. But understand that there is many other options. This is just one segment. For instance, you take the medical industry. You could be serving travel nurses. These nurses, they get assignments that they go for 2 to 3 months at a time, and they just change. They move from one hospital to another. They get a stipend for their living expenses. And yes, they are looking for a place that they can stay. They can stay like a, you know, one of those motels, whatever, extended stay hotel, or they can stay at a much better place like yours, and have a much better experience that is closer to what they feel when they're at home, right? So that's one option. You can have physicians who are traveling because they are learning. They're going to a hospital that is a learning hospital, right? And they need a place to stay. You could be talking to, let's say, patients who are coming to the location because they're getting a procedure done, right? So let's think plastic surgery, for example. If you have a place that is close to a facility where they do plastic surgery, this is like a renowned place. People come from all over the country just to get their, you know, whatever, their surgery done. Then they need a place to recover so that then they can go to the follow-up visits and all of that, right? Or even the people who live in that area, if they're having that type of treatment, they probably don't want people to be seeing them in their recovery process. So maybe they want to hide away in your place to get recovered, right? Maybe you're like, I don't know, like next to or close to children's hospital, and a child is getting cancer treatment, and this is like an ongoing thing. Well, with the child comes the family. They don't just ship up the child and say, okay, well, good luck with your treatment. There's a family supporting that child, and that family needs to stay somewhere. So just, I mean, like, just with that, you can have a business, right? If you look at academic, oh my goodness, there's so much there, right? Like, you have a university where there's students who are coming with their families to tour the university to see if this is the right place for them to do their careers. They need a place to stay. You have families who come to visit their student who's already staying at the university. They're typically in a dorm, so it's not like the family is gonna, go and stay in the dorm, so they need a place to stay. You have visiting professors. You have students who come for, like, say, a summer program or a 2-week program. You have events around the university, graduation, you have football games. There's so many things, like parent homecoming and all of that, like parents weekend. So universities, it's great. Okay, there's a lot of avenues there. You can have corporate guests. These are like relocations. There's, let's say you're within close proximity to a big corporation, then like the headquarters. So then they send people there constantly to get trained. These are people that you can host, right? And another avenue that you have is emergency. Like if there's an emergency, for instance, there's a hurricane, and hopefully your property was not affected by that hurricane. You're within proximity to that, but disaster workers come, they need a place to stay. Displaced families who were in a home, but now they don't have a home, they get a place to stay. You have insurance companies. We've had this many times where insurance companies contact us and they choose our locations for their clients. Sorry. So there's many options. There's entertainment, like think of concerts, like you're within close proximity to, let's say, an amphitheater or something like that, right? So people are going to be constantly coming for that. Or you're close to a convention center. There's live events too. So for instance, you may have a family that they just sold their home. This has happened to us. This has happened to us many times, where somebody contacts me and say, hey, I just sold my home and my new home is not ready yet. We need a place to stay for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. 4 weeks, whatever it is. And yes, absolutely. So we love those people, right? There could be people who they're doing a home construction, right? Like they're in the middle of a project and they don't want to be with the dust and all of that, so they need a place to stay. Or they had a home flooding. There's so many avenues, right? There's so many people, and hopefully you seeing this now, you're like, oh my goodness, yes, this is, it's not just tourists, right? It's not just tourists. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so now many people struggle with this question. Where should you do it, right? Like, where should you have this short-term rental? And what I want to say is that your where is connected to your why and who you want to serve. Okay, so what I would like for you is to, at some point today, after this meeting, is look inside and ask yourself if this is actually something for you. Why do I want to do this? You know, like, how comfortable am I with a property that is really far away? Like literally I have to take a plane to get to my property. Or do I need the comfort of, ooh, there's some interference there. So, or do I need the comfort of having the property very close by to where I live? You know, that's probably a good first step, right? To have that.
What?
Now,
You're on mute, right?
where, oh, so sorry. Yes, we were having some interference there. So one of the questions that you need to ask yourself is, you've already defined who you want to serve, right? Like we already went over that. Like there's so many different people. Then where do those people go to? Where do they go to? Is there something that is attracting them? Well, if you were going for the academic, then hopefully the place that you choose is going to have a university, right? Very close by. So that if that's going to be your target. But if you're, you know, you're like, no, I want to go for a touristic place. Well, you know, maybe a place at the beach would be good, right? And and then you start kind of figuring out, like, you, it's, this is really interesting because it can get overwhelming. It can get overwhelming to say, oh my goodness, I could do this. I could have a short-term rental anywhere in the world. And it's like, oh, that's mind-blowing, right? But then you really need to scale it down a little bit and start like zooming in, like, okay, well, let's look at where I'm at right now, and then see, okay, within where I'm at, this is my comfort level. I mean, like, am I really comfortable flying for 10 hours so that I can get to, let's say, Europe, to my location? Am I comfortable with that, right? Or am I more comfortable getting the house next door to me and just being able to, oh yeah, walk around and get there, and here's the toilet paper you were needing, or something like that, right? Like, so that's so important, right? So that you don't overwhelm yourself. Just look around you first, and then start expanding. So start like here, and then start opening up to other markets, right? So now we said, where do the people you want to serve go to, right? Because if you want to serve those people, then figure out a location that is going to be where they're going. One other question is there a place that you want to retire at, right? Like, oh my goodness, I would love to retire in Florida. Well, maybe that's a place where you should be thinking of, right? Or is there a place that you actually visit often? So, for instance, I am originally from the Dominican Republic. I wonder, do I want my own place in the Dominican Republic? So, since I go there every year, you know, I mean, it's possible, right? So there's all of these possibilities. And then just think, what will draw your guest to that area? What is the anchor, right? So we have properties in Florida by the Disney parks, and that is the anchor, right? It's like, oh yeah, they're coming for the Disney parks. And that is the target, like these families that are coming from all over the world just to have that experience, right? So this is a good way for to starting to define the where. So now, once you identify the market, please do your research. You need to check the local short-term rental ordinance, because as I said before, every market is different. Okay, you can check your competition, go on Airbnb, pretend to be a guest, and put on whatever city you're looking at. You then, when you do that, you also see what your nightly rate could be. You know, you get to see the range. Oh, well, this is what a 2-bedroom is charging. What is a 1-bedroom? Or this is a full-on house with a pool, and look how much they charge. And look at the reviews. I love looking at the reviews on the market that I'm getting in, because that tells me what is really attracting the guest to that location. What do they think of the vibe of the town, of the market, right? And so that's very important. You can check out AirDNA for like more in-depth information. What they do is they take information from Airbnb and Verbo, and they do their own analysis for you. You have, that's like a paid service. Now, is the property that you're looking at in that market under a homeowners association, HOA? Then what are the regulations of that HOA? Very often HOAs are kind of providing limitations to short-term rentals. So just check it out. I mean, there's some HOAs that they're like, we don't care, you know, yeah, we love people doing short-term rentals here. But others, that's a no-no. So the last thing you want is to go and buy a property, and then it turns out, whoo, well, what I wanted to do this was to furnish it and to rent it and all of that, and I can't do it unless I do a long-term rental, you know? So just do your homework, okay? And very important, always have an exit strategy. Exit strategy is, what if this doesn't work? I mean, what if suddenly the regulations change? And now, okay, I have here this place that is fully furnished and I cannot rent it for a week, you know, like I cannot rent it the way I intended to. Well, then maybe you have to pivot and you have to change to a long-term rental. So figure out how much income you can get with this property as a long-term rental, because that may be something that you need to do, right? Or maybe, is it sellable? You know, would you be able to sell this property having made some money, right? Like, so look at all of those things. So now the question is this right for you? Okay, now this is very fast paced. So think like a hotel, but much better, right? Figuring out your why is key to see if this is right or not for you, right? Do you love to travel? Do you want a vacation home and you want to offset the cost of it? Are you looking for a business? Are you looking for a side business? Are you looking for a big business? Whatever size you want, that allows you for more free time. Perhaps you already have a property. Perhaps you are a landlord right now and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so tired of these tenants. I'm tired of chasing them to collect the rent, and there's always damage to my property and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, so maybe that's your why. So what I'm here to tell you is that this is a very exciting business, and it gives you the opportunity to invest in real estate in multiple ways. Like really, it's not just one thing, it's so many things, okay? So steps to getting started. we have first, I mean, like, I'm just gonna give it to you like one by one. This is what you do. This is how you get started. Determine your geographic market. Then you acquire a property. Determine what experience do you want to offer. What's the vibe? I mean, like, okay, so right here, these photos here are oceanfront properties. Like literally, they're oceanfront properties. The one on the left, it's like a mansion. It costs like $2,500 per night to stay there. Now, the one on the right, it's really not listed on any platforms that I've seen, but I was walking on the beach and I happened to see this and I'm like, okay, I gotta take a picture of this because this is definitely something that could be rented. I mean, like for the right person who is like a surfer dude who's like, hey, I just want to be laid back here. I'm sure they will pay money to be in like right in front of the ocean and be able to grab their surfboard and just go, right? So be creative, and then just determine what your target wants and what vibe you want to provide with your rental, and then just go for it, right? So think like your guest. Think, what if I were this, and that, what would I want to see in a short-term rental? Where would I go? What would be like a good amenity for me to have? Like, do I need to have my private pool, or is it okay to go to the community pool? That kind of thing, right? Okay, so moving on with the steps, you also need to create your power team. Gather your power team. That is so critical, right? You need to have a cleaner. Cleaner is so important because if this property is constantly moving, constantly changing guests, you're constantly getting in there to clean, right? If your property is your house next door, then yeah, that's fairly easy for you to go and clean it and get it ready and whatever. However, if your property is 2,000 miles away, not going to happen, right? Like, oh yeah, let me jump on the plane and go clean it and all of that, right? That would be ridiculous. So you need to have a cleaner, a local cleaner, a dependable person who can easily communicate with you, who is somewhat tech savvy, who is your boots on the ground, right? You also need a handyman who, because problems will come. I mean, like, there's no perfect property. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's brand new. There's always something that's going to come up. And so you need to have someone to really, that you're able to call on to send if something happens, right? So that's another step. Then you have the setup. You need to use functional furniture that is aesthetically pleasing, plus all of the essentials and technology. So you think like, okay, what kind of setup do I want to do, and think style too, but comfort and function comes first, because you don't want like a super pretty bed, but oh my god, when you like lay on it, it's like super uncomfortable, right? Like, oh, I couldn't sleep. Like that's one of my things. Like, okay, you must have a comfortable bed if you're staying at a short-term rental. So if you stay at one of ours, then you're gonna have a comfortable bed. I can guarantee it. So so that's something to think about. And then also make it pretty, make it like lively, make it something that the person would be like, yeah, I want to stay there. And you can hire an interior designer, or you can do it yourself if you love decorating and stuff. Or you could do a combination where you're like, hey, you know what, I just need someone to give me an idea of how this space could work, and then I go and do it, right? So it depends on you, right? I recommend that you run this like a business, okay? Not like, oh yeah, whatever, like, think like a business owner, run it like a business. Obtain a license for the short-term rental. if a license is required, because there are many markets where they're so small that it's like, what? A license? No, that's not even a thing here, right? So if you're required to have a license, then please obtain the license, get your insurance, establish a bank account that you use only for the purpose of your short-term rentals. Take professional photos, okay? This is so important to take really good photos at wide angles, plenty of light. You want the guest, when what they're gonna see, all they're gonna see is the photos and they're gonna read the reviews basically. So they're gonna see the photos, and if it's not enticing, they're just gonna skip you over. They're like, okay, next. There's many other options. You're not the only one in that market. So, just make sure that you take really good photographs, and often that means hire a professional to take your photos, because the photos are what's going to grab your guests. Okay. You're going to then list it on online platforms such as Airbnb, Verbo. You're also going to create a welcome manual. Okay. A welcome manual is, it can be 1 page, it can be 5 pages. Don't make it 10 pages, that's too long. But just something that provides the basic information for the guest, so that they know, okay, this is the internet information. These are places that I can go to. This is what's expected of me when I leave. This, like, you include some checkup before you leave. Please make sure you clean the dishes, you do this or whatever. So you set the right expectations. Also, it gives them information on what's included in your short-term rental. Like, oh yeah, you can expect this and this and that, right? This is how you get into it. You're going to use this code, or I'm going to meet you there, or whatever it is, right? All of those things will go in your welcome manual. Where to park, where the key to the pool, to the community pool is at, right? So all of those. All right. So then you're ready to welcome your first guest. And the first guest is always the most exciting one, right? Because it's like, oh my goodness, it's like, that's when you see it happening. Like when you get the ding from your phone, it's like, yay, we got someone. Yes. So it's very exciting when that happens. Now, day-to-day activities that come with having a short-term rental, you get the bookings, you manage from your phone. You literally, I don't know if you can see my phone. Yeah, this phone is it's your most important tool in your work, in your business, right? And so you pretty much can manage everything from there. You get to be organized. You get to keep your calendar up to date. The last thing you want is a double booking, right? Like 2 different families showing up at your place at the same time, right? Because somebody didn't update the calendar and now they were both booked at the same time, right? So you don't want that to ever happen. Most operations, as I said, will be from your phone. There's other things that it's better to do from your computer, but for the most part, you're managing on the go. So what that means is you're free, right? I love to travel, and I've been in Italy, and I'm talking to my guest who is in Texas, and they have no clue that I'm not right there. They think that I live like a few miles from where they're at, right? In fact, I live in California, and they're always thinking like, oh, can you meet me here? I'm like, no, I can't. But, and then I tell them, I'm really far away from you, but whatever. Okay. So it's very flexible. It's very flexible. So now another step is clean the place, set it up. You need to make sure that it's squeaky clean. You don't want people to, you will get some people who are very meticulous, let's say. There is hair on the bathtub, or there is this, like, you don't want, or whatever, the place needs to be squeaky clean. Like you want a clean place because you don't want to know that you're like, that somebody else was staying there before you and the stuff didn't get clean, right? And honestly, you would be surprised at hotels. Like, I don't know if you've seen these programs where some people go with like this special lights, and apparently, like, the stuff that they found, it's like, oh my goodness, like on the sheets and stuff. Well, you don't want that. You don't want somebody to come with that infrared light thing and start examining your property. So make sure it's clean. Make sure everything is fresh linens, everything is all good and ready to go. Also, really important to stay true to the photos. Excuse me, because they've booked your property. They're looking at the photos, and if they come and they see something completely different, that's a letdown. That's asking for a really bad review. Okay, so you greet them, you check them in. It could be remote, which I recommend, or in person if you prefer. You check them out, also remote recommended. Then you clean, you review them, and you repeat this process, right? For your next guest. So one thing that's very important is communicate, and communicate, not only with your guests, but also with your team members. So time is of essence. You need to be responsive in a timely manner, right? Like if you get an inquiry, don't wait, just respond. And they love that, right? Okay, so attention to details, streamline your operations, anticipate any issues before they come up. You need to have some sort of record keeping so you can track your income and expenses. You may have to file hotel taxes if they're required, and the platforms where you're listing your property are not collecting them for you, then you need to do that. So this varies by market, so you need to do your research. And you're constantly replenishing supplies, the toilet paper, the soap, like you need to put new soap, new rolls, and kitchen paper towels, etc. So that means you're making more orders or going to buy them or ordering them online, whatever. But that's part of your day to day. So, are you ready to build a vision around a short-term rental business? So that is the question. Like, did you get tingles? Is this something that it feels like, oh my God, I should do this, right? Like, if that is the case, then I'm just here to tell you, do not delay with your goals. Take committed action. I mean, if it's right for you, just jump with both feet. No, don't put like, oh, let me just put one foot in the water and see, if it's going to be cold. I'm telling you, it's going to be cold if you just put the one foot. Just jump all in, right? Like jump fully in. And there are many resources that are available to you. And these are all free, right? Like you can just go on YouTube and you can search for short-term rentals, and there's tons of information there. You can go to the actual online platforms, and they have a lot of self-help videos and things like that, and articles that they've written on this topic. You can join some Facebook groups. You can get books that are about this. I mean, believe it or not, there's books out there about this. So Jim Rohn said that without a sense of urgency, desire loses its value. So urgency. So I just want to ask, if this is something do you want, then just act on it with urgency. Like don't delay. Like what is it what's holding you back? Why would you delay, right? So just go for it. So it's not rocket science. It's not. It's very doable, and you can do it. So now if you're lit up, but you feel that I will get stuck on my own, or you can't make this happen fast enough, or you're really afraid to jump, it's like, oh, I could really use some hand holding, then you have the opportunity to work with me to show you the ropes for every step, to build your confidence, learn by doing, accelerate your progress to achieve your goal, and get there faster. I mean, just get there faster, right? Like I've done this, I know what we need to do, and you just go and do it.